Coming to you from his downtown Denver studio, here's the Backstage Jazz Radio Show with your host, Steve Roby.
Welcome, friends at home and friends in the studio. This is the Backstage Jazz Show, and I'm Steve Roby. My guest today is jazz vocalist Lynn Skinner. She'll appear at Dazzle on Thursday, January 4th for a 6:30 p.m. show. We'll be discussing her music and upcoming show at Dazzle. Welcome to Backstage Jazz, Lynn.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be with you.
It's great to have you on the show. Thank you. Let's start with a brief overview of your musical career and who were some of your influences or mentors?
Well, my musical career began when I was going to take an art class when I was 15 years old, and it was full. So I was popped into the Girls' Glee Club, which was a choral group, and unbeknownst to me, I had a singing voice. I didn't even know it. And so it's a good thing that that's what happened, because visual art is not my forte. And so I stumbled on my voice, and by the end of that year, I was singing solos, and I was terrified. I didn't have any idea of how it got into my body and what I was going to do about it. So it took me some time to, I guess I could say, embody my voice in a way that felt like it was really me and it wasn't some fluke. That was the stark beginning. And then I went on to get a degree in music. First, I was in LA and was going to make a career there. But my desire was to be a little closer to the kind of nature I liked. And also there were lots of things about the music business when I was a young pup that I just didn't quite feel comfortable with. So I relocated to the Pacific Northwest and finished out my college education at a school called University of Puget Sound in Tacoma, Washington. And I did a lot of choral music, magical music, sang for a baccalaureate there and also a graduation while I was there, and had started writing my own music during that time, which was very eclectic. Did some things in coffee houses, and Seattle being a great coffee house place to do it in the 70s. And then I relocated back to my home city of Denver after a long 7-year, long-distance, old-fashioned write 3 love letters a week romance with my current husband, my only husband I've ever had. I relinquished my love of Puget Sound and the beautiful aesthetic of the Seattle area where I lived for a couple of years after graduating from college, and plopped back in Denver and kind of had to start over. And that's when I began to sing jazz and was in a vocal trio for 5 years called Ménage à Trois. I was the chick singer, kind of the Annie Ross, maybe, but not nearly as gifted as she was in terms of the way she could scat. And I had a fun range. I had a good range, so I did enjoy that. And I worked with 2 other musicians, one in Boulder and one in Fort Collins. So the 3 of us lived in different cities, but we rehearsed a couple times a week and put together arrangements mostly from Jack Mano, the late Jack Mano, who did arrangement for the Perry Como show prior to being in the Denver, Boulder, Fort Collins area. So he was a great arranger, and that was my sort of slice of Manhattan transfer type experience for 5-6 years. We did a lot of festivals and clubs in Denver and other places in the western part of the States. So that was really fun. And then I set off on my own, and I started leading groups and did some, the club circuit, and expanded my repertoire, kept writing music, and still had a little tickle in my throat to do some classical music. So I started producing my own concerts that were eclectic, where I would sort of blend classical music and jazz and original music into little sets with different instrumentalists. I worked with dancers sometimes that were in the performances. I also collaborated with a couple of dancers for different concerts, and really enjoy always collaboration, which of course jazz has a special place in my heart for that, because so much of it is improvisational, and also lots of listening in a different kind of way than just feeling like I've got to be on pitch as a classical singer, or, singing the vowels correctly, that kind of thing. I had to unlearn my trained voice in order to really unzip my jazz persona, because I knew that being accurate wasn't as important as being expressive and trying to tap into that. So that was part of my
How did you do that?
In my career. I made a fool of myself for the first 2 or 3 years, because I didn't realize that my keys as a soprano in the classical world and the choral world were really not the best setting for singing the material that really should have been more conversational. So I basically learned how to make my vocal experience more conversational rather than, I guess I would say, performative and accurate for the tradition of all kinds of material that preceded me for centuries in the classical genre. And my personality was more happy to do music where I could be more playful, more spontaneous, relate to the audience in a different way. So it's really how I found my musicianship, I would say, more through jazz. I was a fool for 2 or 3 years, and I would attempt to scat, and it was a train wreck, as we call it. So I would just, stumble around, and sometimes an instrumentalist with me would roll their eyes, and I'd think, oh dear, what's going on? But it was great street training, and after a while I kind of gravitated to those songs that really felt heartfelt, and like I could add richness to the sound instead of just sort of the soprano element. And that was a great breakthrough to have that happen, to sing blues and feel like I could actually do it with some sense of grounding instead of attempting it. It's fascinating to change genres and find the center and the core and kind of the soul and essence of each of those forms, which was my goal, instead of just kind of manufacturing an image of it, which I do.
It's a daring move to do that as well, entering the unknown, I would say.
Really? Yes.
So do you have any musical influences that you still fall back on? I mean, is there like a favorite album or singer or musician that really does it for you?
I am still, you don't know, so I shouldn't say that, but actually, Joni Mitchell continues to be an inspiration. When I was young and just discovering that I had a voice, she had just started putting out music that was circulated. So I would imitate her and match her every note and her stylizing. I loved her lyrics. I thought, and still do think, she's quite a smart, unique, diverse artist. Her career has been fascinating. I haven't always been close to her work. It depends on where I'm at artistically and where she was. But I did probably 8 or 10 Joni Mitchell tribute concerts over the years.
Interesting.
In the Denver area and also other parts of the country. One of the concerts I did was with Michael Stanwood, who played didgeridoo on some of the pieces. So I always brought in textures and interest in violin, things like that. So that was fun to orchestrate her music through my voice, and I wouldn't even touch singing her material until I'd been more seasoned, because I didn't want to just imitate her anymore. Right. She was a training camp for me, a boot camp, vocally speaking.
Right, you got to start somewhere.
That's right. And she's had a fascinating chapter or two the last couple of years that I've really enjoyed being in tune with. So Joni's one. I also liked Annie Ross. When I started singing jazz, I learned about Lambert, Hendricks, and Ross, and enjoy lots of like Bill Evans, lots of people that play instruments that aren't my instrument, but ones that really move me. And I'm glad that I didn't just focus on vocalists. I certainly liked, James Taylor back in the day, and also, Paul Simon for their wordsmithing. And sometimes being drawn into an artist is because of one of the specifics that they highlight, that that we may be drawn to, like good lyrics or great sound or the feel is right. So that's kind of the criteria for how I tend to be drawn to musicians and musical art, for sure. Laura Nyro was a big influence.
Laura Nyro, oh my God. Thanks for sharing
Sounds
that.
like you know of her.
Oh, yeah, don't get me started.
She's, I don't want to forget her because she was just such a soulful, talk about eclectic in a way, but she had her own sound and such an interesting voice and approach to piano that a lot of people picked up on. She was a pioneer.
Absolutely.
Without trying to be a pioneer.
Yeah. You sent over a few tracks to share with our listeners. The first is called You Can't Run Away From Your Heart, from your Interior Motives album. What can you tell us about this one?
That song is kind of a waltz. It is a waltz, and it's something that sparked in me when I was listening actually to the elder neighbors living next door to us who were yelling at each other. And I thought, wow, you can't run away from your heart. They're still together 50 years later or more, and something was just coming. So my muse got busy and kind of formulated something, and then I put this piece together so that it would kind of speak to feelings and challenges, but that the heart always wins.
Beautiful introduction. Let's listen to it now here on Backstage Jazz.
He leans on the door and stares into space. His lips start to move. His heart starts to race. He wants to be with her. He has so much to say. He knows that she loves him, but she's left anyway. You can't run away from your heart, although your mind will tell you what it wants to do. You can't run away from your heart. Once love finds its way into you. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. They met through a friend about 6 weeks ago. She gave him her body, he gave her his soul. Without any warning, things had happened too fast. He staked out the future, but she was stuck to the past. But you can't run away from your heart just because you're afraid of the pain. You can't run away from your heart, 'cause it'll come back to haunt you again. Ooh, yeah, yeah, yeah. He looks at the snapshot and searches her eyes for some sign of leaving, of secrets and lies. He runs out the door, pain all over his face. With his heart in his feet, he starts to pick up the pace. But you can't run away from your heart, although your head says it's over. You're through. when love runs inside. You can't run, you can't hide when love runs inside. You can't run, you can't hide when love runs inside. You can't run, you can't hide when love runs inside.
You're listening to Backstage Jazz, and my guest today is Lynn Skinner. You sent over a second track today. It's called Could It Be Loving You from your Gems in the Rough recording. What's the backstory here?
The backstory there is that my mother was getting remarried, and she fell in love very quickly, and I wanted to write a song for her wedding. And so I put myself into what it would feel like to not only write it, but sing it at her wedding. And this is what came of that.
Let's listen to it now. It's Could It Be Loving You here on Backstage Jazz.
Into mine, drifting into places I had left behind. Could it be your voice weaving through my hair, leaving gentle words, reminding me you're always there? It's your touch softening the pain, giving me so much time and time again. Maybe it's your heart beating strong and true, teaching me the finest ways of living life by loving you.
This is Backstage Jazz, and my guest is Lynn Skinner, and we're going through her music catalog and going to be talking about her upcoming show at Dazzle. Speaking of which, what can the audience look forward to at the show?
Well, I'll keep the eclectic feel. I originally thought I might do something to celebrate the winter solstice time of year because I've done many concerts over the years with that as a theme. But since it's actually in the new year and not lining up with the solstice, I still wanted to keep the darkness into light theme. So once I hashed that out and decided how I could present that in a broader theme, I came up with an idea called New Beginnings, which also pertains to the fact that this will be my first time performing in a public venue in almost 11 years by the time the concert comes into play. So it's like, wow, that's interesting. Okay, so it's a combination of darkness and light, as is often felt during the solstice, especially winter solstice time.
Right.
And new beginnings, which can be new year, it can be rebirth, renewal, because of many traditions that celebrate the holidays in their own ways with this sense of rebirth, renewal, lighting a candle, that kind of thing. So from that menu, I decided to just have a wrestling match for about 6 weeks inside my head about, now, what do I want to do? What do I feel like doing? What do I think I should do? And then I would pluck it out later because it wasn't quite right for the arc. But now I'm really settled and happy on, the set list that I have, which ranges from Paul Simon to Duke Ellington to a Bonnie Raitt tune to Sergio Mendes to Paul McCartney. I've never done a Beatles. Well, I've done a Beatles song once before. To Horace Silver, Harold Arlen. So it's a combination of writers and influences. And what I'll do in the performance also, and I've done this many times, is break down some of the pieces where I'll just do a duo with one of the players, like drummer and voice, and also bass and voice, piano and voice, and also I'll be reading a couple of poems. One of them is my poem, and I'll be having the reed player also improvise while I read that poem. I'll ask him to do the alto flute so that it can have kind of a timbre to it. So I really enjoy colors and textures, and most importantly for me, I will say, this is about feeling like this is what I have to say right now in my life after quite an interim of not singing, in honor of the darkness and light theme, and making it a celebration, of course, for music and for the new Dazzle, which is still pretty new on the block in its incarnation. So it should be fun. I'm really looking forward.
Who's going to be joining you on stage?
The pianist is Bob Schlesinger from Boulder, and I have done many things with him. The bass player is Peter Huffaker, who I've also enjoyed playing music with in the past. The drummer is Jill Fredrickson, who I've also recorded with, as I have with Bob Rebholz. And the reed player is Bob Rebholz, who's the reed player as well.
What does the year look like ahead for you regarding music projects? Have you got anything coming up?
Well, this is the main one I want. I think it's a pilot project, so I'm very excited that it's going so well for me that I feel like I still know how to do it. And I think from here it will be a launching into some house concerts. One of the pieces I'll be reading is an excerpt from a book I published when I wasn't performing about the voice. And I had lined up several house concerts prior to COVID coming to town. And so that was halted. But picking that up again is exciting to me because I blend singing with reading chapters from my book. And so it blends music and the content of the book, short excerpts of that.
Nice.
And then also probably doing Dazzle again if they'll have me sometime later this coming year or thereafter, and a couple of other venues, and probably reaching out more to do some things because it's something I can still do, and I love it so much, and love to be part of the community that way.
Lynn, where can our listeners learn more about your music, upcoming shows, and even the book you mentioned?
More music, you can hear me on Spotify. I have a website, lynnskinner.com. I have a YouTube channel, and I am on LinkedIn as well, if anyone's interested in that. And the book I wrote is called Vocal Pathways, Exploring the Heart of Our Sound. That was a fun project, and that is on Amazon. And so I'll be announcing those connections at the concert. Hope to see some people I've never met before.
I'll also add the links to the websites you mentioned in the show notes for this podcast as well, so our listeners can just click on those and find those easily. And just a reminder for our listeners, Lynn Skinner and her band will perform at Dazzle on Thursday, January 4th for 6:30 p.m. show. Doors open at 5:30. Go to dazzledenver.com for tickets and more information. Thanks for your time today, Lynn, and have a great show at Dazzle.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful.
If you're enjoying the Backstage Jazz Show, we'd love for you to like, subscribe, and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. And now, back to the show.
The Backstage Jazz Show was recorded at Little Raven Studios in downtown Denver, and our producer was Craig Stevens. You can find Backstage Jazz wherever you listen to podcasts. Be sure to stop by our website, backstage-jazz.com, where all past and current episodes have been archived. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, you can email us at backstagejazz@fastmail.com. This is Steve Roby. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Backstage Jazz.
You've been listening to the Backstage Jazz Show. Join us next time for more great jazz and interviews with your favorite musicians.